All right, guys, good morning. Let's get to the lines. I know a lot of people are calling this morning. Ray, is that you? And if so, what's your question?
That's Roy.
Roy, excuse me.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yes. I keep hearing some language on our news reports at night, and even some of the call-in today about a concealed gun carry permit. You need to clear this up for these people. There is no such thing as a concealed gun carry permit in the state of Tennessee. It's simply a gun carry permit. Although that being said, I believe it's better to have it concealed in a situation if your life is in imminent danger. I don't want the man that's coming into a restaurant with a gun to know I have one. I want the element of surprise. But the people need to know that this is not a concealed carry permit.
And that other caller mentioned as far as going to places where...
Right. In Tennessee, it's a civilian handgun permit is what it's properly called. The reason you hear the terminology concealed weapons permit is because in about 30 states in this country, you don't have to have a permit to carry a weapon openly. Every state that touches Tennessee, with the exception of Georgia, has a law that says you can carry the gun openly in that state with no permit. Tennessee, before the 1980s, had that law. You could carry the gun openly. It had to be in your hand, but you didn't have to have a permit. Mm-hmm. And so the nomenclature, sort of like Xerox for copiers, became concealed weapons permit, because if you wanted to hide it, if you wanted to holster it in some states, you had to have that extra permit. Tennessee doesn't have that. In Tennessee, if you have the permit, you can carry it openly or concealed.
There you go. I like the comparison there. All right, let's, Cheryl, thanks for calling. What's your question?
Hello?
Hey there, what's your question?
This is Cheryl. I have three things I'd like to touch on. And the first one is about the mental health issue. Well, that needs to be, how would you say, they need to look at that better, you know, and differentiate who's what and this and that, okay? And I just don't think that's a fair thing.
Okay.
Number two, okay, now if they take away our Second Amendment, the only people out here that are going to have firearms is the law and the criminals. And then we, as citizens, are not going to have our own protection, okay? These criminals can get guns anywhere, okay? They won't pick illegally. Now, number three, you know, some of these manufacturers that are making toy guns, they look like real guns. I think they should be held responsible for children that get shot by officers thinking they're real guns. Yeah, this is just all this bothers me. And if they take away our right, then it's martial law. That ain't fair. It ain't right.
Cheryl, thanks for your call. I don't think the Second Amendment will ever go away.
Oh, I don't think it's going anywhere.
But she did mention the idea of, you know, law enforcement will be the only one that has it, and so it kind of reminded me of the bump stock issue. Explain to folks kind of the development with the Justice Department on the bump stocks.
Yeah, the bump stock is really, I think, a knee-jerk emotional response to the Las Vegas shooting that was a year and a half ago now, because that person had them. And the argument is he was able to fire a lot more rounds in the 11 minutes that he was up there shooting than he would have been able to shoot if he just had a regular semi-automatic weapon, which is I don't know that I buy that conclusion. You know, you can shoot a lot of rounds in 11 minutes. But the bump stock issue is there's a couple of issues that go with it, but the basics is the bump stock is a device that you can put on a semi-automatic, typically an AR-15, but you can put them on AK-47s, that lets the gun, when you put it to your shoulder, slide a little bit, about 1.5 inches. And based upon that sliding action, it lets the person who's shooting it operate the trigger faster. Now, they still got to pull the trigger for every shot that is fired. Just lets it happen quicker. Now, there are some people that are professional shooters that can shoot that fast with just the gun with no bump stock, okay? But it's not a fully automatic. A fully automatic is a gun where you pull the trigger back one time and it continues to shoot until you let go of the trigger. So mechanically they're different. What's happening with this bump stock issue, and actually the ATF looked at that in 2010. There's an opinion letter from the ATF in June of 2010 that says bump stocks don't create machine guns because you still have to function the trigger at least once for every shot. It just happens quicker. The ATF has just come out with a new rule where, and I think it's because Trump told them to, that has essentially tried to redefine without any statutory changes what the definition is for the word automatic and for the word function of the trigger, or the phrase function of the trigger. And so what they've done is they've taken something that the ATF originally said is not an elephant and said, well, now because one of these things was used and a lot of people died and there's been an emotional reaction to it, well, we're going to say that it now is an elephant.
So are bump stocks banned now?
There's a federal rule that's going into effect that's in a 90-day period, that at the end of the 90 days, bump stocks, if nothing changes, will be declared illegal for civilians to own, and they'll have to destroy them. Now, I know of at least one lawsuit that's already been filed in Michigan to challenge whether or not the ATF could create those redefinitions. That's a really complicated issue that has to do with the constitutional separation of powers doctrine, which brings up the question of if the legislature has created a definition in a statute, can an administrative agency expand or redefine that definition?
But the question is, what is the purpose of having a bump stock anyways? Why have it?
Oh, because people, well, there's a couple. People like to be able to shoot faster. People do, in fact, think it makes it sound like, because it's shooting faster, a machine gun. Because you can take a firearm that costs about $1,000 with a bump stock and do something close to what it would cost you $30,000 to do if you actually went out and bought the machine gun. Because you can buy a machine gun. A civilian in Tennessee, make no doubt about it, can own machine guns, fully automatic. All you got to do is pay a $200 transfer tax. The difference is the gun, if it's a semi-auto, like an AR-15, may cost you between $600 and $1,000. That same exact gun, if it's a legal machine gun, is closer to $25,000 to $30,000 because there aren't many of them.
I know you described it as a knee-jerk reaction following the Las Vegas shooting, but don't you think there should be some type of modification, knowing this is what was used to fire onto just hundreds of people into the crowd?
No, not really, and because I think it's an emotional response to a rare and isolated event. These things have been out there for about 2 decades. You don't see them commonly being used to commit crimes. This guy used them, no doubt. A lot of people got hurt, a lot of people died as a result of it. A lot more people die from drunk drivers, okay? A lot more people die from a lot of other things that society says we're going to tolerate. And even if people are dying from, you know, like the Waffle House shooter, he didn't use a bump stock, he had a regular semi-automatic. You know, people died.
But potentially he could have killed more.
He could have, but if you've got that semi-auto, the rate of fire with a 30-round magazine is so high, it's not like the bump stock makes that big a difference. Where if you don't have the bump stock, it might take you, let's say, 5 seconds to empty the magazine. If you have the bump stock, it may take 2.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a big difference.
And this is definitely a debate that will continue. Like you mentioned, there is that lawsuit. So again, thanks for everyone that did call. I know we couldn't get to everyone's questions this morning, but definitely an informative segment. We'll wrap things up whenever we come back after the break on Morning Line. Thanks for